So what we're going to do in this explainer is unpack a pretty wild 18-year journey. It's the story of how a deeply obscure anti-democratic philosophy, something born in the dark corners of the internet, managed to find its way to the absolute center of American federal power.
It all really kicks into high gear with this statement from then-candidate J.D. Vance back in 2021. But you gotta understand, this wasn't just some off-the-cuff campaign rhetoric. No, this was a direct quote from a political blueprint written years earlier, a blueprint designed specifically to dismantle the American state from the inside out.
And here's the thing, it wasn't just a plan. By May of 2025, it was a reality. We're talking more than 30,000 federal employees fired in just a matter of months, all under an initiative spearheaded by Elon Musk.
So, that's the big question, right? How on earth did this actually happen? How did an ideology that explicitly, openly rejects democracy become official U.S. policy? Well, we're going to trace that path, step by step.
To get it, we have to go back to the beginning. The story really starts with two very different thinkers who together created this potent and you could say dangerous combination of philosophy and political engineering.
First up, you have the prophet, a guy named Nick Land. He was a British philosopher back in the 90s who founded this, well, bizarre and kind of cult-like academic unit. It mixed serious philosophy with rave culture, chaos magic, and cyberpunk.
Now, Land's central idea, and you really need to get this, was something he called hyperstition. The basic idea is that fictions, if they circulate enough and enough people come to believe in them, can literally make themselves real. As it turns out, that would be a chillingly accurate prophecy for his own movement.
Okay, so if Land was the prophet, then Curtis Yarvin was the engineer. He's a software developer who, writing under the name Mencius Moldbug, wasn't interested in abstract theory. He was building a practical, step-by-step guide for a hostile takeover of the state.
Yarvin's key concept was the cathedral. He argued that elite universities and the media form this big, decentralized network that basically controls the state by deciding which ideas are reasonable and which aren't. And his solution? Get rid of them. Completely. So you see what's happening here. You've got this really powerful dynamic. Land provided the deep, philosophical, almost religious justification for this apocalyptic future. And Yarvin came in with the practical politics, the how-to guide for actually taking down the government, the prophet and the engineer.
But look, ideas are just ideas, right? These things probably would have just stayed on some weird corners of the internet if it wasn't for one critical ingredient, a huge amount of money and influence from the tech industry.
And that's where Peter Thiel comes in. He's really the central figure here. The PayPal co-founder, Facebook's first big investor, he became Yarvin's most important supporter, funding his projects and basically acting as the bridge between this fringe ideology and big Silicon Valley money.
And when I say he was committed, I mean absolutely committed. Thiel spent a record-breaking $15 million on a super PAC just for J.D. Vance's 2022 Senate race. At the time, that was the largest single-candidate donation in American history.
And Thiel wasn't alone here, not by a long shot. The network grew to include some of the most powerful names in tech. You've got Mark Andreessen from A16Z, Gary Tan from Y Combinator, and major figures from crypto and defense tech. They all formed a powerful alliance around these ideas.
So obviously this stuff is pretty intense. To make it more digestible for the mainstream, the whole philosophy got a rebrand. It was called E/AC, or effective accelerationism. A critic once described it perfectly as Nick Land diluted for LinkedIn, a kind of corporate-friendly version of the idea that pushing technological change with zero limits is a moral good.
Okay, so now all the pieces are in place. This sets the stage for the final step. We can now draw a direct line from Yarvin's obscure blog posts all the way to the office of the vice president.
Just look at this timeline. It really shows you the whole wild 18-year journey. It kicks off with a blog in 2007. By 2021, a future vice president is out there publicly promoting its central plan. And then by 2025, that exact plan is being put into action from inside the White House.
And the result? It was immediate. It was forceful. On day one of the new administration, Musk's team staged what people there called a hostile takeover of the federal government's HR department, which is what paved the way for all those mass firings. Okay, now we have to talk about a much darker side to all of this. The
The source material we're drawing from documents direct links between these philosophical ideas and violent extremist movements. And just to be clear, we're going to present what the sources say here, just laying out the findings neutrally.
So the source material reports that Nick Land, the movement's philosophical founder, publicly endorsed the writings of the Order of Nine Angles, or ONA. That group has been designated by several governments as a neo-Nazi Satanist terrorist organization.
And the sources draw a direct line from there. The same group that Land endorsed, the O9A, provided the ideological guidance for the Adam Wolfen Division, a violent terrorist group that has been implicated in multiple murders right here in the United States.
This core idea of accelerationism, this whole concept of intentionally speeding up societal collapse, it was picked up and twisted by white nationalist terrorists. And it was explicitly cited in the manifestos of mass shooters who were responsible for the deaths of more than 70 people in attacks from Christchurch, New Zealand, all the way to El Paso, Texas.
So when you boil it all down, here's the crucial point. The entire movement, from its philosophical roots to its political execution, is driven by this one stark belief. It was stated very plainly by its most important financial backer, Peter Thiel, way back in 2009. It's a worldview that sees democracy not as the foundation of freedom, but as an obstacle to it.